And we're live.
All right. Well, everybody who's going to be listening, thank you for listening to the Older Brother podcast. This is episode 22, and this is TJ Martinell. I'm going to be filling in for Aaron. He's determining his Native American heritage. Apparently, that's what he told me. So he's determining his Native American. Anyways, I guess does anybody want to start off with any thoughts on that? That's kind of the most recent thing that's happened.
I did see that someone asked President Trump, is he going to pay? Apparently he had made some bet with Pocahontas or something like that, and this reporter asked him, are you going to pay up? And he's like, what? She's won, what is it? She won 1,000th Native American or something? You know, it was pretty funny. I was like, the balls on these reporters. I mean, they don't even try to hide the fact that they're so partisan.
Yeah, that's what I thought was kind of amazing is that I've never done a DNA test before, but I know the insignificance of even having a 1% or a 2% testing. And there's a lot of things that we can extrapolate from this whole thing. But the fact that she chose to go public, it's almost as though, I mean, you never know what's going on behind the scenes, but I almost wonder if somebody knew found out that she didn't want it reported originally, but they were going to go public with it. So she decided to control the narrative by trying to just gaslight everyone. It's almost as though somebody else who she didn't like had found out and they were going to break the news before her.
Yeah. I wonder when this test was originally taken.
Right. See, that's the thing that really kind of shocks. That's the only reason I can imagine is because, I mean, there's other possibilities, but one of the problems is that she's now opened herself up to serious problems, not the least of which is the Cherokee Nation that has come out against her.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It's insane.
I'm just thinking of, well, think about all the stuff that she's now in trouble for claiming this heritage. And it's just so bad. It is as bad as you can possibly imagine it to be because, I mean, as somebody pointed out, most white people in America have more Native American heritage, which, by the way, is a really they didn't even prove that she was Cherokee, from what I understand. It just showed that she had some Native American. Well, I don't know what to say. We all came from kind of the same group of people at one point. At one point, there was only so many people. Like, we're all kind of related if you get down to it.
Yeah, I mean, we're all part African, I guess, right? You know, if you subscribe to the out of Africa theory, right? So we could all say that. So, I mean, if you're 1/1000th, I mean, that's, you know, both my parents were, you know, born and raised in Europe, and I probably got 1/1000th Native American me in somewhere, you know.
Well, and I just think it's really interesting that there's this obsession over one's heritage that really, let's imagine that was true, that she really was, and let's say it wasn't 1/1000th, it was a significant amount. I mean, we're talking 18% or whatever.
Right.
What does it have to do with who she is as a person?
Yeah.
What does that have to, does she celebrate any of their culture, their traditions, their values? I think that really raises a lot of questions about someone's identity and what they are, because clearly the Cherokees are saying you're not one of us.
Yeah, well, I think the real challenge that David, I don't know if it's David, but someone has there's some feedback, so I don't know if it's
David. Let me try to work through this a little bit on my.
You might have two things on, or you need your headphones on, one or the other. No big deal. But I think the problem is that she took a spot in Harvard that she would not have gotten if she had not designated herself a person of color.
Right. And you got to wonder. Here's one theory, and I have no proof of this. This is just based on just what I've observed with people. She was probably told at some point that she had Cherokee blood in her, and it was probably one of her grandparents or whatever, or it was just a story. I mean, everybody's got family stories that they really don't know if they're true or not. And so she put it down. But the real question is, how did nobody pick, like, do they not demand papers? Because I can imagine that somebody would demand proof. that they would say, you need to show us that you're actually, because if you're not a member of the tribe, the Cherokee Nation, then you can't claim you're a Cherokee, or at least I don't know. Then that, of course, invites that whole debate because somebody brought up an interesting point. This has occurred with different Indian tribes, including here in Washington State. I don't know how much you follow this, John, but there have been tribes that have taken away tribal membership from people because they say that they're not actually one of them or that they're not genuinely one of the tribe. Yeah, it's not insignificant in terms of the I guess the rights that it. I don't even know if the word rights is an appropriate word because I don't get those rights. But just I guess you have access or shares to property or tax revenues on
those casinos, man, the casinos.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting. I'm just kind of amazed as somebody who's worked in media my entire life. I can't imagine. I don't understand who advised her to come out with this, and then just claim that it makes her the presidential nominee for 2020. I mean, it's almost as though she's like, I got caught. Let's just do a Hail Mary and see what happens with this. The quarterback's about to get sacked, so might as well throw that long pass.
Yeah, sorry, I was just distracted for a second. I was just messaging Ann here. She thought it was canceled, and I'm sending her the link. So I'm trying to see if she's coming.
Yeah, sorry about that for anybody who was waiting. Yeah, sorry about that for anybody who was waiting. We were having some technical malfunctions.
Yeah, I would just say, I just want to tell her, join.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear
you. Brother.
Are the issues kind of resolved?
Yeah, they're resolved.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Oh, with the Hangout? Yeah, but the issue with Pocahontas is not resolved.
I know. I picked up a little bit of there are other legislators doing this now, taking the test, and I don't know if it's just as a comical sidebar or if this is some kind of maneuver that's going to be played out. And I mean, as you said, TJ and John, I mean, we can work this back how many generations? I mean, what is really the point? To this once you get beyond a lineage of 200-300 years, really. I mean,
well, this is all about the oppression Olympics or victim Olympics or whatever you want to call it. Everybody is trying to find something that they can claim that they're discriminated about, so they get extra props because of it to make up for the so-called historical injustices. I mean, I wish that I claimed I was Black or Native American when I applied to college 30 years ago, because they there wasn't DNA tests back then, so they would just have to take my word for it.
Right. I think that's the interesting thing about it is when it comes to this whole discussion is, let's say that you were, or I found out that I was, say, 18% Cherokee. It would be interesting to find out about that. But the problem is it really has that part of me would have no, I'd say, impact on my values or culture, whatever. And I just wouldn't be, I don't know. I think that's the problem is she's claiming it as her heritage, but it's not a part of who she is. I mean, does she celebrate any of their culture? Is she very immersed in their history? Like, for example, I'm part Irish. I don't know how much Irish I am, but I'm very, very, very well versed in Irish history, Irish poetry, Irish literature, Irish folk music. I know a lot about Irish history, and not just because it's part of who I am and what I am, but I'm genuinely interested in it too. So if I found out that I wasn't really as much Irish as I would think I am, it wouldn't really bother me a whole lot because I still love it for what it is.
No, well, if I could just say that on that point, if I found out I was not as Irish as I think I am, I'd kill myself.
Well, I mean, aren't you actually from, or your parents are from originally?
Yeah, both my parents were born and raised in Ireland, so that would be pretty traumatic.
Now, just out of curiosity, what part of Ireland are they from?
My mother's from Meath, which is just outside of Dublin, and my father's from Limerick.
Limerick. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's where this and you were just touching on this, John, this obsession with heritage is just DNA. And these are the same people who say that this stuff shouldn't matter. So,
Yeah,
well,
race is a social construct. And here's, by the way, and here's my DNA test.
yeah,
Uh,
that's what I've never understood about these people. And didn't National Geographic just come out with that whole article essay on how this stuff is not important? If it's not important, then why is it so important that she be part Cherokee?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sorry, you didn't go on the Trail of Tears. So, I mean, if I just don't know what to say, and it's kind of ridiculous that somebody would be stealing the heritage of. If you really look at what it is, it's somebody trying to capitalize on and take advantage of the heritage of people of other people. That's not clearly not according to DNA saying it's not hers. But she, even if it was, she doesn't celebrate it anyways. It's not who she is, and it's not what she is. So yeah, it's exactly in a fight over hierarchy in terms of victimhood stuff. And I think the problem is if people know a whole lot about the Cherokee history, they would know that they're not actually at the bottom either. So
yeah, there's a hierarchy within within Native American. And I understand you look a little like you might have some Native American going on in you. Are you there, Ann? Your picture is.
yeah, Anne. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think, Ann, you should see what freebies you could get. You could just claim your your ancestry. I mean, I think your parents, because you were born in the Middle West, so I'm assuming you're at least one side of your parents must go pretty far back into American history there. So you can probably claim some protected class and get away with something. Maybe bully a publisher into publishing one of your novels because you could say, "What are you discriminating against a woman of color?" you know, and then also claim to be trans as well, so you can triple stack it. That's because I'm trans Jewish, by the way. I'm a trans black Jew, and so I'm a protected class. So people say because I identify as black and Jewish, black, Irish, and Jewish.
No, we can't hear you. Yeah, Anne is trying to speak, so she's also technically disabled at the moment. So she's running the Quattro of the Quattro card. So yeah.
We have ableist privilege. That was I don't know who the fuck came up with
Anne
that.
is not ableist in this conversation.
So let's talk about the problem with this whole thing. What really this is about is people trying to be a victim and claim as much social status as possible. And the problem is if you're trying to get ahead in the world, it's counterintuitive because you want to be smarter, more knowledgeable, more skillful, better at what you do. You want to be more competent, and you want to just develop further in whatever you're trying to do. And this whole thing it discourages you from doing anything or accomplishing anything because you can't claim to be a victim if you've accomplished anything. You can't, but they have this schizophrenia where it's okay if you accomplish something in the political realm. If you advance in politics, you can still claim to be a victim, but it's hard to claim to be a victim for most people if you say started from scratch and just built up your own business.
Well, you reminded me of something. Stefan Molyneux did a video review of a new film, a remake of A Star Is Born, and he talked about the fact that we live in a world where it's not okay for everybody for most people to be average, which by definition you are. I mean, I'm not you, but I mean, by definition, most people are average. There's nothing truly unique about them. They're not great singers or they're not geniuses or stuff like that. So I think because we do have a society that is somewhat celebrity obsessed, you look at all those freaks who try to go on like America's Got Talent or X Factor or whatever it is. And they, majority of people don't have any real talent. So they compensate for that by getting props through victimhood.
Yeah, I think that's part of the. Curious about your thoughts on that, David.
Yeah, well, actually, I was participating in some research with two Iranian professors, and we were looking at victimhood in particular with from a feministic perspective, but The difference between the East and the West is if you have an entity like a god or a deity that you believe in, you have much more resolve in saying, I'm going to be able to get through things. And the study was specific to parents of children with disabilities. So imagine an Iranian mother with a child with multiple sclerosis or something like that, compared to the U.S., where the U.S. has more of an approach of this. I'm a victim. This has been brought upon me by God, and also now society owes me. And I don't mean to sound callous in that, and also that my tribe or my reinforcement, my energy to have resiliency with this is going to come through social media and the people I can find on social media and through the government programs and government agencies. So it's really this external grab of trying to define who you are versus what was pretty amazing in the Iranian research, and this was done through ANOVAs and a lot of statistical correlations, is once the mothers believed that there was a God, that there was an entity, they weren't asking the entity, they weren't praying and saying, please take care of my child, make my child whole again. They were just saying, okay, I have the strength now to deal with this, and they moved on. So it is one of these things, I think, where you've said with, Elizabeth Warren, this sits really wrong with me. I mean, this is affiliating yourself to try to
what kind of accomplishment is it to say that? I mean, let's imagine you meet somebody and you get together with a whole bunch of people that you're meeting for the first time, and you have so many words to describe what you are, who you are. The most normal people or people who have their act together, the first thing they're going to say is what they've accomplished. So that they are defined by what they do, whereas people who subscribe to this whole victimhood mentality are going to talk about how they are somehow connected or disabled or like something about how they are a victim, and that's for social
or their sexual orientation. You just meet someone in there.
See, this is what amazes me is these same people say that this stuff is all innate or they don't have any control over it. Well, okay, it's not an accomplishment then. You're not accomplishing anything.
Yeah.
Welcome, Anne.
Hey.
Yeah, like Anne, for example, when Anne first meets a person, she doesn't talk about her disability of being flat-chested, so, that, right, Anne? I'm guessing that you don't do that.
Well, most people will mention it for me, and they'll steal my parking spot and then kick me down the stairs. And then they're like, no cushions to fall on, bitch. That's hilarious. And but fortunately, unfortunately, since I plan on committing a lot of crimes and I don't want them to have my DNA, I can't prove that I'm actually 99% not human. So.
Well, no, I was wondering, Anne, I was saying earlier, I don't know if you could hear it, that you should take the DNA test, and if you're you're probably got more Native American in you than Elizabeth Warren does, because you're, at least one of your family must have some of that in you because you're from the Midwest, right? So somewhere along the line, someone banged a squaw, right? So maybe you could bully a publisher into publishing one of your books because you're a woman of color.
Well, you see, I got a decision to make there, because bullying publishers into publishing my book is great, but unfortunately, because the public no longer reads, because so many people have been bullying publishers into publishing their totally unreadable work for bullshit reasons, that there's so much crap out there that the public doesn't want to read anymore because they've had all this crap shoved down their throats. It's much worth it to me to be able to commit crimes with impunity.
Okay, I was just throwing it out there, but a life of crime, that's a viable option too. Right.
Yeah, like okay, I can bully a publisher, or I can leave my DNA at the murder scene and not have to worry about them having it.
Okay, yeah,
right.
just a thought. Anyway, so David, when you found out you were half black, how did this affect your life?
Yeah, big time. So I went into one time. I went in to the dermatologist, and this guy's like, hey, like, you know, you've got great melatonin or whatever the hell. He's like, what percentage? He goes like, you never have to worry about like sunburn and all of that. What percentage Native American are you? Honestly, he told me this. He's like, you know, doing whatever. I don't know what the hell it was I had done. And I said, I don't know. I don't, you know, I've never done the test or whatever, but he was convinced. Like he did the whatever it was, you know, the thing in the office and was looking, and he's like, yeah, totally. Like you're fine. Like you can be out. And because I don't honestly, I don't wear lotion. I can be out in this, you know, biking for a whole day and I don't get a sunburn and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe the guy's right on. You know, I don't know how far we go back. It brings up this curiosity, but yeah, what advantages or disadvantages are just, I would just probably want to know. I wouldn't try to use it as Elizabeth Warren used it, you know, as a card to, or a key to open a door, you know. But yeah,
I don't sunburn. I don't sunburn either. Huh? I don't know. It
would be great to send it, damn, outer space.
Yeah. When are gingers going to be labeled a victim group because they can't suntan? When's that going to happen? Right? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say being tan is kind of like being thin. It's not really prestigious anymore because we're not allowed to have, like, you know, looksism. So I'm not sure if it's actually a disability at this point.
Well, yeah, isn't it? It's almost like there's like an ugly Olympics too. Like, I mean,
what do you mean by that? Where are you going with that?
Well, no, because being unattractive is like, oh, well, you're oppressed. You need to get, you know, more props. Like, do you remember that giant behemoth they put on the cover of Cosmopolitan eating a cake of herself?
Yeah.
And like people are saying, oh, that's, you know, beauty at any size, or, you know, I think, Anne, you kind of have issues with these fat bitches, don't you? I think.
Usually when they sit on me on the subway and they don't even notice I'm there, like, hey, I paid for that seat.
But you don't like that, like these women going around, like, because I remember when I interviewed you years ago, I don't know if you remember this, you were talking about, you read a bio on Lena Dunham. I think you said you were at a doctor's office, and, you know, here, you know, you were talking about here, this girl was born into privilege, like rich Jewish family. They set her up in a loft in Soho in New York, and you know, she's droning on about her thighs being too fat, and you were like, you fucking bitch. You know, you had no time for that.
Yeah, well, it's not so much that like I'm offended that she's fat. It's that's kind of the ultimate first world problem when, you know, you have everything handed to you on a silver platter, and you have all the time in the world to go work out or buy expensive healthy food, and you just don't, and you go on about it like you're an oppressed person because of it. Like,
you know, I was talking about this with someone this week, and one of the problems is that the older generation does not talk about the hardships and privations they want. That's my general impression, is that they don't really talk about that. I mean, an example of this is how we get to go into a grocery store and get fruit any time of the year, because we have refrigeration. Yet I have relatives who their Christmas gift, as in singular, was a tangerine or orange.
Yeah, my mom talks about that story when they were kids of, I mean, if you would get an apple for Christmas. And I mean, my daughters, we were grocery shopping the other day, and each of them picked out a grapefruit, and I mean, they were so like thrilled, like, you know, can we get this grapefruit? And I was just feeling proud inside. I'm like, oh my God, are you from the 1930s? I mean, this is just like not modern day, but no, you're absolutely right. I mean, think about, okay, so right now, you know, the World Series is going to be starting. So, you know, Brewers here in Wisconsin, but you go back even 75 years and you just take a look at the stands for Major League Baseball and people dressed up in formal and all of that. I mean, we've lost that. And I mean, I guess I'm going off tangent there, but even the discussion of what it was to be formal and proper and respectful and completely gone. It's complete, like shopping, literally shopping at Walmart at 6 p.m., half the people in pajamas and not even, I mean, just floppy, oversized, stuffed hair is not done. And it's like 6 p.m. And I'm like, where's your respect for society, for self?
You know what it reminds? When you said that, I'm thinking like it's true what you're saying. They're wearing the stuff that you'd normally only wear out in public if you had to go to the laundromat. You know, when you're all out of clean clothes.
Yeah, and I mean,
or you were really, really ill. I mean, actually, as has been, spread publicly by enemy and friend and foe alike, I have been in a mental hospital, and like people in the mental hospital are like forced to dress the way that, and people in prisons are forced to dress the way that people just go into the grocery store, or even going to class or going to movies or places where you might want to dress up and have a little fun, are just voluntarily dressing themselves like they're in a mental hospital.
I can tell you one of the reasons that this is because if you live in a society where it's about egalitarianism and everybody being the same, you're going to revert to the lowest common denominator. So the lowest, because everybody can't be great. So if everybody's got to be the same, everybody's going to be low. So if you have people who are dressing nice for formal occasions, or you have them dressing nice for when they go out to dinner, or dressing nice when they go out to a baseball game, or whatever it is, other people are going to look at that and feel judged. They're going to feel uncomfortable. And it's all about making everybody feel equal. And they're going to intuitively sense that this other person, by dressing up, is signaling a sense of I would say, not negative elitism, but healthy elitism, of saying, I'm striving to be a better person and a better individual by dressing up. And other people can't have that. Or at least people who are I'd say insecure about their own life choices,
Yeah, well, people who didn't used to have much used to have their Sunday best, and they'd proudly wear it.
Yeah,
and they dress as well as they can. Now you have Mark Zuckerberg going for photo ops in the grocery store wearing a schlubby T-shirt and blue jeans. I remember when I worked at the Chicago Reader, and they used to pay us $9 an hour because half of their editorial assistants were people who were used to working in kitchens or whatever and having nothing, and the other half were trust fund babies whose parents had already bought them apartments anyway. They'd be paying us $9 an hour, and then the owners would come in. They were probably taking home $1 million a year or whatever, and they're just very ostentatiously, we tried to dress up and look nice and look fashionable and have fun and look like a newspaper staff, and they'd come in like torn up jeans and Birkenstocks and a sweatshirt to show us that they were just like us. And everyone looks at them like, we know you're not just like us. We make the money and you take the money. Would you mind putting on a suit, please? You look like shit.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the women in these, those women who had all that money, they probably had a closet just for their shoes. So, there's that. But I'm not sure when we made this, leap to embracing mediocrity. Like there was a YouTube, a Twitter little video, and it was footage from New York City in 1908 or something like that, or like way back when, and it just showed everybody like all the men were in suits with hats, and the women were all dressed in these like almost looked like evening gowns, but they were just walking in the street. Everybody. And when you said everybody had these good clothes, I had this flashback to Little House on the Prairie. I don't know if anyone.
No, I thought the same thing.
Yeah, do you remember that? He'd say, "Okay, girls, put on your Sunday dresses."
Yeah.
Right. They even as poor, they were dirt farmers.
Yeah, you make it out of potato sacks and stuff. Literally. So, and I think I took this conversation off where TJ initially asked, and that was, how the accomplishments of the older generation, how are we capturing those and passing those down? And I don't have an answer for that. And TJ, I guess, is that where you were?
Yeah, that's exactly.
And I kind of derailed it.
No, that's fine. That's kind of what I was saying, is that we're talking about how everybody's seeing themselves as a victim, and they're seeing themselves as being oppressed and all this stuff. And they're living in I think one of the reasons that our society, there's so much misery and depression and whatever, like these psychological problems, is that people are constantly bombarding themselves or each other with negative messages, where instead we could be talking about how if we were having proper communications with the older generation, they would be reminding us on a frequent basis what we have and what they didn't have at the same time. I mean, for us, it's going to be explaining to kids what life was like before the internet, and them being amazed by it, and then us reminding them, not to say that life was so hard before the internet. You had to go read a book to actually learn something. But I think that the point of it is that people suddenly appreciate something that they have, and they don't assume it was always there. And I think that that's the problem with a lot of people who are younger, is because there's this disconnect between the older and younger generations. There's no continuity. They don't really have a sense of place. And so when somebody tells them that they're oppressed, they don't have history to draw upon and say, well, wait a minute, my grandpa didn't have refrigeration. My grandpa didn't have electricity. He didn't even have a bathroom in his house. So what's this whole thing with me being oppressed? But because there's not that conversation going on, they can be indoctrinated to believe that they've had a rough time in life because somebody said something that they didn't like. And that's partly why they have to have these safe spaces, is because they are so it's almost like keeping a kid from ever being exposed to germs and then expecting him to go out into the real world. He's not going to have built up an immune system to just deal with stuff that every ordinary human being should be able to withstand.
Yeah.
There's no inoculation. Yeah, I mean, because people right now have a mental breakdown if there's no free Wi-Fi.
No, you're right. You're right. So why have we lost this conduit? Because I mean, we have plenty of people out there, and yet you're right. Like, these stories aren't told. Is it a societal taboo not to share this? Is it a microaggression? I mean, I don't buy into that. But I mean, what's going on?
Well, John sent me that link tonight about him, and it was John and Beckloff talking about John being excommunicated from some corner of the internet I've never even heard of before. And it's like these they call themselves the free folk or the neo witches or some kind of thing. And I'm like, wow, last week I was hip, and all of a sudden there's a whole new corner of the internet that I never heard of. Suddenly, you can go from being hip to being old in the space of 10 minutes. And because the internet moves so fast, nobody wants to be old. Everyone wants to be hip. So the minute you start talking about, the good old days or the bad old days or anything that's earlier than 2016,
yeah,
you're the subject of a "get off my lawn" meme.
Yeah, I was trying to explain the Sears catalog to somebody who was like 20 years old. Honestly, a couple days ago, with Sears filing for bankruptcy and stuff like that. And I said, when I was growing up, and so I'll be 47 in a couple of weeks, but I said, I remember the Sears catalog coming in and it would be 2 inches thick, and you'd page through it, and Radio Shack kind of had something similar. And that was the way you would pick out things that, you wanted. And obviously back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, I mean, you could get anything, your household staples, wash tub, whatever you wanted. But
did you know you could actually order a house from the Sears catalog?
I think I did. Yeah.
Speaking of Sears, so they just declared bankruptcy, and I this week, I think it's chapter 11, and it's I don't know, who knows what's going to happen with it, but I've really become interested in companies that have risen, and they become these powerhouses, and then they fall. And I was really fascinated when I was doing some research on Blockbuster. Their height of number of stores and their profits was in 2004. By 2010, the company had gone bankrupt. But this is a little bit off topic, and we can go back to the whole Sears thing if we want to. But my thought is that just shows how a company, when it's at its height, may just be on the verge of falling apart, because its height doesn't mean that that's where it's going to stay for very much longer. It could almost be a roller coaster. And so my thought is, are we going to see the same thing with these big tech companies, where like Sears, because Sears was the Amazon of its day. there were no
absolutely.
internets. You ordered stuff on you ordered stuff through mail. I mean, there's I remember reading about how the Japanese Americans that were in the internment camps were able to get everything, pretty much anything they wanted if they had the money, could get anything they wanted by just ordering it on Sears catalog. And so
Yeah.
the same thing with Amazon now. And so are we going to see the same thing happen where fatal flaw in this company? And with Amazon, my thought is the fact that the company doesn't make money or profit the way a traditional company did. And so are we going to see Amazon? I mean, it just reached the $1 trillion market value, and the same with Apple. So curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, Amazon makes money for people who use it. So there's, even if there's no central stockholder that's making money, most of the people who are involved in it have incentive to go on being part of it. But I certainly hope that Twitter's peak was getting Donald Trump elected. If all social media died tomorrow, I would piss on its grave and dance on its grave, and
well, dance before you piss
get
on
my
it,
tribal headdress out of grandma's attic and just do every dance I could think of on its grave. I would be so happy if it all died. Actually, if the whole internet died tomorrow, I was as a short, as a fiction writer, I'm at the age where I've honed my craft and I've learned to write and I've got all this life experience, and I'm sitting down to write and I'm going, wow, if I sat down and wrote about my youth, people are gonna go, what the hell were you doing washing dishes for a living for 7 years? Why didn't you just become a cam girl? And there's somebody who'll pay to look at anyone naked. And like, you can't explain, well, there was no such thing as a cam girl. And you couldn't just go on Craigslist and get a job in New York. You had to take what was in front of you.
Yeah, so you're still not. So you've completely written off being a cam girl.
Yeah, John threw that past you about 5 months ago and kind of laid out the entire business plan. So yeah. Okay.
Well, so the thing is that I don't know. I just keep looking at history and who would have thought? Here's the example. So Blockbuster, people accuse. I don't know if it's true because I just haven't done the research on it. But people have accused Amazon of putting a lot of mom and pop shops out of business because now you can order all this stuff. The exact same accusation was being leveled against Blockbuster. It was pointing out all these mom and pop video rental stores out of business because it was able to use its large, just corporate connections to get videos for cheaper so they could offer it at a lower price. But what happened is new technology came in and they didn't adapt. The same thing with Sears. Sears ruled the online ordering via mail, but then the internet came out and they didn't shift over. So I'm wondering, are we going to see something like that happen to these companies? And I don't know. I think it would be fascinating to watch, especially in the Seattle area, because if everything's so intertwined, you look at how that's contributed to our real estate value in this area, and what would happen if Amazon were to suddenly take a hit.
You just made me realize that. Please, Amazon, don't go broke, because my property value is directly tied to the success of Amazon. Okay, and that's my biggest single investment. I got a $600,000+ condo, and I really don't want it to go down in value.
Right. But going back, go ahead, Ann.
So I was just about to come up with a tasteless joke. I don't know how Amazon France is going to ever be able to do single day delivery when five times a day there are people just lying all over the street praying.
that could get in the way, yeah.
Well, yeah, and going back to what Dave was talking about with the Sears and online ordering, you had to wait, I don't know, a couple weeks for what you wanted. But here's the really interesting thing, though. Things have become much more convenient, but also I'd say that it's even with as technology advances, a lot of our freedoms have been gone. So you look at a lot of the airline flights today, you get internet, you get all these different amenities, but you have the TSA and you got to go through security checkpoints, and your family can't say goodbye at the terminal. You got to go through the gate to get X-ray scanned and all that stuff. And the same thing with Sears. You used to be able to order guns and ammunition through Sears back in the day, and now you can't do that anymore. And they're trying to even make it harder to just buy firearms in Washington State, where John and I are based. So that is interesting, where a lot of kids today have a lot of luxuries, but they may not have the same freedoms. And I think that that's another thing that's been lost, is that the older generation maybe, I think some are genuinely trying to do that. I talked to a World War II vet who's still alive, who that's part of his whole thing now, is going around just talking about how important it is to have freedom. And so I think that that's one of the things that it would be good to have, is to have older generations remind the young, this is what we used to have and it's gone. And if you want it back, you're going to have to fight for it. But more importantly, don't give up your freedoms so easily, because once they're gone, it takes so much work to get it back.
Yeah, I'm just imagining a kid looking at you going, like, very quizzically going, freedom? Like, he's never heard the word before.
And I know most kids are not going to listen, but it's the ones that will listen. And you know what? When you connect it to what they like, for example, if somebody said you can't watch a TV show, I know part of me, the cynic, maybe I need to put a little bit more of Aaron's spin on it, where the kids are going to just give up all their freedoms as long as they have access to their cell phones.
I mean, people don't seem to be too concerned about it. I guess it's kind of like the, Aaron basically has that, watch it burn and roast some marshmallows. And there's times that I'm very tempted to assume that role, and I think part of that is because, with the exception of David, I don't think any of us here have children, so nor does Aaron. So, but I think if I had children, I would be a lot more invested into the future. But because I don't have any, that I'm aware of at least, I don't have any kids, so I kind of, sometimes when I hear about all this negative stuff, I'm like, fuck it. When the shit really hits the fan, I won't be around anyway, or I'll be too old to even know what's going on. So
I think my thought on that is I share the observations that people like Aaron make. I think what bothers me, though, is I don't want to spend the next 30 years of my life watching it slowly digress. And, you look at, say, the Roman Empire and all that other stuff. And I think, John, you pointed this out in another episode, and you were right. It didn't just occur overnight. It took a long time, and there was no definitive point where the Roman Empire ended or where things started to turn around. But just watching it slowly, watching institutions decay, watching these groups that were supposed to be on our side reveal themselves to be against us is kind of depressing. And you want to be optimistic, and I think that's why so many people we get those who are just so eager to jump on any kind of positive news. For example, when Lindsey Graham suddenly starts having a backbone on some of these issues, and which, by the way, I don't know if you guys heard, he's planning to get a DNA test too to show that he's got more.
I hear that.
I want to know, did he hire a new political consultant or something like that?
Yeah, he's kind of edgy now.
Because he's been saying, somebody during some of those hearings, that guy had fire in his eyes, and now he's blowing people off. No, I understand. Kavanaugh's not the most. He's not extreme, but it's just, I think that's
tell it to the left. They think he's a freaking antichrist.
Well, that's my. We don't have to talk about. I think
Kavanaugh's been done to death. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's been done to death. I just think that that's why it's so important for people to be focusing on their own personal accomplishments, because even when stuff around them is going, to hell, you can at least look at your own life and say, you know what, I did the best I did with the circumstances that have been put in front of me. And I think also determination to not let them control our lives and not determine our own happiness. Like that's kind of what the Enjoy the Decline slogan is about, which, if, by the way, we'll put a plug in for Aaron's book. If you haven't bought Enjoy the Decline, definitely pick it up. I've read it. It's a good book to just help people adopt a healthy mindset about things around them, because I see people who are still emotionally invested in the outcome of the United States as a country. And I've got ancestors, since we're talking about heritage, I can directly trace my lineage back to 1620 something. Literally right after the Mayflower. And so watching this stuff go on for me is conflicting, because a part of me wants to not let that all fall apart, but at the same time, I don't have any control over it. And we just got to accept the times that we're in.
Yeah, you almost have to have like a Buddhist thing about it. Like I notice, Anne, like you kind of get upset, not necessarily by political things, but you have a way of kind of letting things get to you. You can go to really dark places about the state of things, like the state of publishing, for example. You mentioned that a lot. I saw that in your Facebook thread.
Yeah, I actually got hired to publish a short article about that on Neil Pollock's website. The state of publishing, it annoys me because I like to read, and the literary culture makes it really difficult to find the good shit to read because they push all this garbage and pretentious crap written by their friends or people who are women of color who are in wheelchairs and transgendered and anything but actual good writing quality. No one cares about anything else or should, but now that's all they care about is the stuff that doesn't matter. And that's kind of what I care about in lack of a belief of God. Art has always been kind of my religion. So when people make it difficult for me to find good books to read and make it difficult for people to find my good books in the sea of crap, it gets to me. But yeah,
by the way, I want to plug some of Anne's books. You can go to AnneSterzinger.com, check out her work. She's wrote No Swim, Life. You can go check out all her. She's a great writer. I've read 2 of her books. She's very good. So as a reader, I'm telling you, here's a good writer. Go ahead, Anne. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I wrote, this one wasn't published till 2011, but I wrote it in 2007 about how men get raked over the coals and divorce and shit, which it happened long before the MGTOW thing. But
I think Lester Reitgardson would be someone as an example of why men go MGTOW.
Yeah.
So guys, one thing I volunteered to do was to monitor the super chat.
Oh, we got one.
We do have one, so I'm going to break in. Darius Thurman. Darius has a question here from the super chat, and he said, "We are freer with internet. We can challenge media." So I'm just putting that out there. We are freer with internet. We can challenge media.
I think that that's true in a sense, but it also, I think there are. It's hard to say whether it's a net plus. I think if the internet was genuinely free, then I would agree, meaning there weren't all these the way things that have been set up with big tech and all that. And I think in the initial days, I mean back 10 years ago, I would definitely agree. But what we've seen, putting aside all the fact, like my job, I work online. My lifestyle is one of the freest I can imagine because I'm able to work online and then thanks to the internet. But people's lives can also be destroyed much faster than on the online because it's so tied to everything. So good information can spread quickly on the internet and thanks to the internet, but so can bad information.
Yeah, and unfortunately, just due to the human psyche, lies seem to spread faster and stick harder than the truth. It's good that, it's possible to have alternate media outlets, but as we saw this last week, the Proud Boys, I think they're kind of dorks or whatever, but they were all going to see Gavin McInnes speak, and they were attacked by Antifa, and they got in a fight. And at the end of the fight, the Antifa started the fight, but they got their asses kicked. And the media story that became the public narrative, because it was pushed so many times on the internet, was that the Proud Boys were just kicking people who were on the ground. Completely distorted. So yeah, you can get the truth out to people who are willing to parse the facts long enough to get to the truth. But most people just want to believe what the crowd believes, and the internet gives them kind of a hyper fast way to spread shit together.
The internet can and does remove the barrier, though, if you want to learn about computer programming or certain things that otherwise you'd have to go to a leftist institution to get indoctrinated. So it does remove that barrier. So we're there. I want to add something, guys. I had mentioned this. I was just made aware of this in the last week. So there is a. I'm going to read it. There was an article about on the internet a CGI generated girl, I believe, who's 19 years old. She's, again, this is not a authentic girl, but the name is Michaela, Miquela Sosa, and she has over 1 million followers on Instagram, and she basically does product endorsements, and she's completely fake. And this is, and it's made by so there's this company that made her, and God, what the hell is, I'm trying to come up with the name of the company, but anyway, it is absolutely kind of terrifying, because some people, so kids, you know, like teenagers are following her, and young adults, and she's talking about like getting a coffee even though, you know, like it's hot outside or something like that. So, and the pictures of her don't seem quite right, but people then are just thinking, well, maybe this is someone who's being eccentric and just using some filters to make herself whatever. She doesn't exist. And the fact is, you can do this now to anybody. And you've probably seen this new technology. You could take anyone publicly speaking. So, you know, anybody giving a speech, and you could modify what they're saying and have video software render a completely different narrative. Like it would take every consonant that they produced, and it would kind of, you know, like the old stuff in, what was that, with the Tom Cruise movies and stuff like that. You guys know what I'm talking about?
You're talking about Minority Report?
No, not talking about Minority Report. But God damn it, I don't know. This is what happens when you get old. But anyway, no, what this is, so this Michaela, so I was kind of checking this out, and like she's got all of these followers, you know, websites and different apparel, and she doesn't exist. They don't have to pay her anything. But here, let's think of the psychological aspect. If you created a few people on the left or on the right, and all of us, you know, and you're never seeing them in public, and this is crazy stuff. And the other part of this.
No, but I just got a brilliant business idea. Maybe I shouldn't share it publicly.
Yeah, Mission Impossible, Anthem. Sorry, Anthem. Thank you. My memory sucks.
Oh God, I was just about to make a Bob Dole joke, but that just shows how old I am.
Oh, sorry to cut in on you, John. Sorry about that.
No, I was thinking, you know, 'cause I always thought, you know, girls had it easy doing this cam modeling thing. But if I could just create this artificial girl and, you know, set up
you could? No, really.
I could just do that, and I could make a fortune. And because she's not real, I could probably get her to do all sorts of stuff, you know. So, you know, and I could create a whole bunch of them, each one for like a different fetish. So, you know, I could have one where she invites her girlfriend over, and they, you know, what, yada yada yada. I could have one where she invites her horse over, you know, whatever. I mean, the possibilities are you know,
well, you know,
countless.
Going back to Darius's question about whether the internet has made us freer or not, I would say it's similar to the automobile. When the automobile first came out, and for a very, very long time, it was seen as a symbol of freedom, especially during the 1950s and 60s. That's when you had all those muscle cars. You had just that culture around vehicles. And what you've gotten to the point is that they're seen now as a liability or a constraint, which is why younger millennials and Generation Z's kids do not want to get their driver's licenses.
Yeah,
it's like they have to pressure them, and it's because, and there's a reason for that. They're not being irrational. It's because the cars are very, very expensive to fix when they break. Thanks to cash for clunkers, used cars are a lot more expensive, and traffic is a lot worse than it used to be. Traffic used to, I mean, if you look at, say, just my state, Washington State, the cities were much, much smaller in terms of population. The traffic wasn't nearly as bad. And so you didn't have as many people, and not as many people owned cars back in, say, the 50s or 40s. And so if you had a vehicle, you had that means of traveling around. But now it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Someone was put something up about Hugh Hefner's death in my Twitter feed. I don't know why he was mentioned, but when they asked him what had the single biggest impact on sexuality in America, he said it was he said no, it wasn't the birth control pill. No, he said it was the car, because before they had they had cars, you pretty much had to pair up with whoever was in your town, whoever you could walk or bicycle to. That was it.
Okay.
And then, when the car came out, were liberated like that. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting observation. I didn't, think about that. And, the impact that's, and now we have like the internet, like with the, with all the dating things. And like, that's why I think that kind of feeds the sense of entitlement that especially women seem to have over, choosing men, the 80-20 thing that OkCupid did, where like the women rated 80% of the men.
It's true. It's
undateable.
Undateable, and it's because they have, to them it's like going to a restaurant that has every type of cuisine, and they feel like they can just order it up, and it's this phony reality. It's really interesting. I think there's so many great things about technology, like just the fact we can do this, right? We're all different parts of the country, and we've got several different time zones going on here, and we can have this, and it's great. But at the same time, there are these huge downsides. So, and I think that part of it is that technology is now advancing quicker than the human brain evolves.
Right. I think that there's also the lack of continuity, like I was saying, where people don't know what was there before them because it's not. And it is, it's almost done in a. And here's the problem, though, with when people say, somebody might say to me, well, yeah, my parents or my grandparents, gave me so much grief about what I had. I think that that's the other problem, is that let's say I had kids or grandkids and I was going to tell them about what life was like before the internet, I would be saying it to them not in a patronizing, look at how spoiled you are, because they didn't invent the internet, and why are we blame? It's almost a form of victimhood, if we're going to go back to that. When people say look at the technology, it's almost saying here's where you came from, and so when you get frustrated, say like I was earlier with some of the stuff we were trying to put together, thinking of and understanding how this stuff was not available back in the day, and how we have opportunities to do things, and we should do it in a positive way. Instead of just sitting there obsessing over what we, I don't know. It's kind of just my thought.
No, I think I get. And there was an article I read this week that also said brand loyalty is diminishing. So that was very strong. For 90 years, people. This is my Del Monte's my brand of green peas, or whatever the hell it was, and now that's gone. I think. TJ, what you were saying is this continuity, things are evolving so fast that we've lost the continuity also. And what I had posed earlier as a question, kind of in our shared direct message area, was, okay, so let's say you're 20 years old today. I mean, who are the people that you can go to if you have grit and determination and you want to set your course in life, that are going to give you honest feedback and to help you, versus, I mean, because
come here, guys. If you're 20 years old, come to the Older Brother podcast.
This is this is what I was thinking. It's this because, okay, so Alameda, California, at the start of this school year, abandoned their dress code. They just said we can't enforce it anymore. We tell the parents, we tell the kids, and we gave up. We just gave up. We put our hands up, and other schools are doing that. But it's one of these so this kind of plays into this a little bit of like, where can you go? Because when I was younger, it was always, the older kids, or like my brother's generation, they were, when he was, I remember going to his frat house that was and meeting up with his fraternity brothers, and they were really cool and stuff. But I mean, there were, even my grandpa used to haul in a Model T. He hauled milk, the big milk crates, or not the milk crates, the big metal. Here's my memory anthem again. Christ, try to save me here. But the milk jugs, the big metal milk jugs. And then when he'd go over these bumpy roads in the country, he'd have to unload them, drive the truck forward, and load them back. he actually served a few months in jail for his dad because his dad had committed an offense, and you could substitute out one of your kids.
No
Wow.
kidding. Wow.
You never heard of him talking once negatively about his life as a younger man. You know, it was like these were the tribulations, but then, you know, he was so thankful that he had what he had, like his fishing boat. You know, he died 20 some years ago, but I mean, these things. But
Right.
who do we, I remember building a garage with him one summer. And I learned just so much because he had worked, you know, he was a highwayman. So he worked and was talking about the roads, and it just in working and teaching me the stuff on the car and changing the spark plugs. And, you know, like I remember those days, and you guys, you know, probably too, of like changing out your air filter, taking off your serpentine belt, the spark plugs and the rotors and the brushes and all of this stuff. And it's gone. And I'm like, where do you go? Where outside of this show, which is, I think, crucially important. I honestly believe that. But where do you go if you're 20 years old and you have some gumption, you have some ambition, and you're hearing us talk and say, yeah, but all of my friends are in their pajamas at home and they're not getting their license and they're playing video games. And, you know, like TJ, I listened to your podcast and my God,
Right.
you're building, you know, you have your friends over, you're figuring out this fireplace, and, you know, you're putting up your stone in your fireplace, and how you're rerouting the stream in front of your place. You're like a damn Dick Prenneke. I mean, you got everything in the hiking. I love it. I mean, I'm listening to this and I'm learning as I'm going through this and how you get the percolator. And how the percolator is to heat your water, but that's, you can be out and you can be, you know, hiking and you can have, you know, make something to eat. But I mean, this is all lost. And it's like, even if you want to plug into it, how do you do that, guys? How do you do it today?
You know, I think Aaron made a really good point a while ago when he said, in one of his books, when he said YouTube replaced the dad, and for kids who didn't have dads. And so I think that's where a lot of the wisdom comes from. But also, I think working together with other people and building friendships is also really important, because I would not have been able to accomplish the fireplace without my friends and family who had helped me out. I'm good at many things. I'm a writer. I'm good at lifting weights and hiking and all that other stuff. Home improvement is not. It's an area where I really need to hone my skills. So but yeah, it's that is where an older generation could really step in and do that. And that's also something I'm thinking about, you know, one day when I get older, having all this knowledge. And my fear is that I'll have all this information to help out young men, but there's not going to be any opportunities to do so in any traditional institution. I mean, that's what was so crucial about Boy Scouts, is it was helping young men get trained by older men into, you know, transitioning from a kind of a confusing and difficult time for them, you know, between the ages of 12 and 18.
Yeah, it seems like people can so much more easily get more of everything. You can get more friends, you can get more acquaintances, you can go to eat more often, you can buy more clothes on Amazon, like you can get more fruit, you can just easily buy some piece of furniture for your house and it's cheap, but nothing that we get is as nice as it used to be. You don't have the solid old friendships, you don't have the solid old oak furniture. Like, there's a sea of books available on the internet, but like I said before, it's hard to, like, you used to be able to go to a bookstore and it was reasonably easy to trust that you could find a good classic on just about any shelf, and most of the books there were probably going to be worth reading. You go into Amazon and, you know, even the promo material for these books is misspelled. And
as an editor, I know that drives you batshit insane. Anyway.
Yeah, like just the one sentence you wrote to try and sell me how great your book is doesn't even make sense. I'm like, well, yeah, there's plenty of books I can buy here for $1.99, but they're all crap. I want a good book. You know, I just bought a monitor for my computer. It's huge. I thought it was going to be great, but it's a piece of shit. It was cheap. It was easy to get. It's big. I didn't even have to go anywhere. They carried it up to my door, and it's garbage. And my garbage screen is kind of a metaphor for the whole internet. Yeah, you can get anything you want from an acquaintance to dinner easily, but it's not satisfying, and it's not connected to anything, and it's not part of a organic experience, and there's usually some crowd of howling angry people you know commenting on the thing that you just bought about how terrible it is.
Well, does this ultimately just go back to the idea of relationships, like that the relationships now are kind of, David, you talked about how brand name doesn't matter anymore. And I think that even extends to people now, like the hookup culture, like, the dates are now, Netflix and chill, or, people just order, girls just order a guy to come over on Tinder, I mean, say, okay, yeah, him, I'm DTF, I got an hour. So,
and it seems things have to be so measured. I was listening to an interview that Molly Ringwald did, and she said, it would be really hard to do 16 candles today, like to produce it and to sell it. So, and I'm like, I love that movie, but culturally too, we're not. I don't know. I think it's really hard for even kids to know how to interact with each other. Or not even kids, but even young adults. Or this DT talked about this, like in the workplace. What if you're driving somewhere, for his work assignment, and he has a female coworker in the passenger side? I mean, what happens 5 years from now? Even if she said he talked about something politically which made me feel uncomfortable, in that. So.
Yeah, he reached over to get something out of the glove box, and he accidentally rubbed against my thigh. I'm now I have PTSD for life, and I won't.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it is this where people don't know. It's so weird. Like how to interact with people. I mean, I don't know. Again, I mean, going back, I got a birthday coming up, but I mean. I remember when we were in Little League Baseball, Christ, we could smoke in the dugout. I mean, it was fine. I've got pictures of it. And my parents are like, yeah, we remember. I mean, and our coach was like this old guy who was like from, the old Rocky Balboa coach, the little Jewish guy or whatever the hell. But I mean, he was like from the 1800s and owned a bar and came down and, gave us all Snickers bars, and it was just, but it was the way that
you can't do that now because all the kids have peanut allergies. So
all the kids have peanut allergies. But this whole thing too of and I remember again scouts going out with scouts and building in winter. And could you imagine doing that today? Like having to build I don't know, basically like an igloo type thing and stuff. You kids don't.
Oh yeah, there's no. I remember actually going camping, I was in Boy Scouts, and it was this huge deal because I grew up in New York City, and back in the day, and it's back in the '80s now, and it was a really urban environment, and we never really got to go out and experience nature. So that's what was so cool about Boy Scouts. And I remember when I remember going camping and just freezing fucking weather and stuff like that. And there's no way kids today could handle that shit the way we did. I mean, we were totally roughing it. I mean, it was, I just don't think physically kids could even do the amount of hiking we did back then without just dying.
And the parents would sue.
Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
I remember I worked at Y Camp from between like 11 and 13 years old. I'm not sure how that was legal then. I'm sure 11-year-olds aren't even allowed to walk the park by themselves now. And I'd be taking all these kids out in the woods, doing all this dangerous shit. We had a great time. And just, it sounds sentimental, but I miss, I like convenience and I like my one-day Amazon delivery, but I do miss reality. I miss real relationships with people. I miss, I've talked about this before, but I miss the way that, like, you used to be able to make dates with people over the phone that you shared with all your roommates, and you'd call your friend and you'd say, okay, we're going to be at a certain place on Friday. People would actually show up instead of like making you wait around while they fart around because they can text message you and make you wait.
Yeah, I think we talked about that once before. I do miss that. Like on Friday nights, we'd all say, "Oh, we're gonna," because no one had cell phones when
Yeah.
that age, and we'd say, "Oh, we're gonna meet here," and it was just assumed that when you said it, you did it. You show up, and then you get together and say, "Oh, where are we gonna go later for the night?" And I really miss doing that. I mean, that was a great part of my 20s. I really, in my late teens and my 20s, it was really, really fun. And I do miss that now because everything is, I mean, I have so many friends now that our relationships are through, text. We don't even talk on the phone. I mean, first with a cell phone, a lot of, you substitute for real life or you talk over the phone. And now it's just like, I have relationships with people and it's like texting. I'm saying, oh, there's a really close friend of mine. When was the last time you actually talked to him? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never met her face to face.
I've been a bit of an outlier for my generation because I'm very much opposed to texting. I just believe that human communication should be as in person as possible because there's so much that can be lost when you are not speaking to someone in person because of how much visuals plays into human communication, and then you don't really get to know people. And also, people can, I don't know, it's almost like using texting as a way for people to avoid getting to know each other beyond a certain level. We kind of see that with the whole Pacific Northwest freeze, where people are friendly and nice, but in the Pacific Northwest, but you might spend years never knowing them because they don't. You try to get to know them better, and they keep you at arm's length. And one of the ways they can do that is by just texting and not really talking to you on the phone. And I think the other thing that makes it so hard for people to get together now is because there's so many different options available. People almost do this whole thing where they are got multiple things going on, and then they get to decide which one at the last minute they're going to do. Like they don't commit. They have a problem committing.
Yeah, and I think it's. I realized yesterday. It's been so long since I've actually gone to a Packer bar and watched a Packer game, and it's because, well, I work from home, which sounds very luxurious, but because you're working on the internet, there's so many interruptions, there's so many time holes that you can get sucked into. Like, you go to Twitter to see if John sent you a message, and suddenly, you've lost an hour and you still got all this work to do. And the game was over 2 hours ago, and it was a great game, and everybody had fun who actually made the time to go see it, but you missed it.
Well, another reason I don't like to go to the, I mean, I remember when a bar used to be, it had one big TV. Right. Now you go to these sports bars, and there was I think it's the Fox Sports downtown. They got like 32 fucking TV screens going on there on a Sunday. I was like, it's almost impossible to really watch a game because there's all these other games going on. So there's no real focus. And at first I thought this was a good idea because, I don't have any satellite packages. I used to be this big Steeler fan, and you could always, any game in the country would be played there on some TV screen. But it was depersonalized because there was everybody there and they were all going for different teams, and there was no sense of community there. It was
no.
I got a good story from I went to England last year and I spent a couple days in London, but then I went into Dover, which is right on the coast, just from Calais. And so I was going through different places trying to find a pub to just enjoy some beer at. And one of them had a huge sign on the front door. It was this little micro pub, and it said, "No cell phones allowed." So I go inside. There's no TVs. There's no music. There's just chairs, and they're all in a circle. And so you would sit down, you get a beer, and then you would talk. Like everybody was just talking to one another. But there's this. It forced the way the micro pub was arranged. You had to talk to people. And so it was a place for people to actually gather and have social conversations. And I think that the number of TV screens in a sports bar tells you about how much conversations you're going to have, and that's none, because there's just all these different distractions. I almost don't, when someone says, "Do you want to go out to the bar and chat?" It's like we can go to the bar, we can chat, but we cannot do both at the same time.
Yeah, and the idea of the neighborhood pub, I'm guessing that's pretty much gone. I mean, I know mine turned into a pot store, so
everything turned into a pot store.
Say that again.
Oh, just everything is turning into a marijuana store.
Yeah, I mean that was my neighborhood pub. I had it here for 20 years, and it you know they closed up shop and it became a pot store. You know, and it was great because I was walking distance, and you know I knew the people there, and I used to pop in once a week or whatever, and it was great. You know, it was kind of like Cheers. You know, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
you know everybody knew your name. You know, and they knew the brand of beer I drank, and Uh, it was kind of that feeling to just it was nice to have that,
Place to relax, where you get to just sit back and unwind and have a beer, and it being maybe a little quiet. And maybe if you want to watch the game, there's the TV off in that one section of the room where people can gather, whatever. But it almost seems like there's this effort to overwhelm us with different noises and visuals so that we don't talk to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I had a friend that went to Miller Park for the Brewers playoff game a couple days ago, and said he had gone, earlier when the park was constructed. Now they have this massive high definition scoreboard and stuff, and he said they were running so many ads on the scoreboard that honestly, it just got to be nauseating. Like everything was changing, and this massive. You just inundate it with ads and visuals, and everything has to top one, and versus like just what baseball was. And he's like, I wouldn't go back for that reason. I wouldn't go back because it's a commercial. It's a goddamn commercial. Yeah, all it is it's simultaneous 10 commercials with high def audio and all of this awesome stuff. And he said it was nauseating. He said and I'm like, yeah, it's just this competition, and we have the technology and all of these things, but at some point, it is, as you said, we lose continuity, and the gadgets, what's the difference? I mean, what's going to ultimately satisfy us? What's going to be enough?
Well, we're unsatiable in a way, I guess, aren't we? I mean, that seems to be the case. I mean, there is a never-ending demand for this stuff, and as a collective, we keep absorbing it. But I mean, there's all these studies coming out now where people are I don't want to keep harping on the women thing because Anne's here, but women are more miserable now than they've ever been, but women have more freedoms now than they've ever had. But they're saying that women are more unhappy now than they were 30 years ago. Yet they have it all, right? I mean, supposedly, right? You got all the freedoms and none of the responsibilities.
Well, I think that really raises another question: is when people always talk about equality, or they talk about all these different things that we need to fight for, one question that I don't always pose it, but I'm always curious what they would say is it going to make you happier? Is getting this going to make you happy or content? And of course, the answer, if they thought about it, would be no, because you think about all the different changes that have occurred. And this goes back to the whole technology thing. People talk about how it's whether something has made us more free. I would go back to, has it really made us happier as people? And I think that the problem is that if we look to technology to make us happier, then we're going to be disappointed. But if we look at technology to solve a problem, but yet we're content regardless, then I think that that's a more healthy way of looking at it, rather than saying, oh, if only we can get this, a hover car or a driverless vehicle, or if only we can solve this technological issue, like spaceflight. Spaceflight is not going to make us happier. It's just going to come up with new problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was also reading an article called "The Sports Arms Race," and it was comparing the stadiums, and it just said the stadiums are in this frenetic pace to try to outdo the other stadiums. With every gadget, every Wi-Fi, every experience. And how long will it be before you'll be at the NFL and your seat will vibrate every time the Packer is tackled or something like that, or they were talking about all of these crazy things which are kind of in the mix, or you walk in and you'll have some special 3D or whatever the hell, vision type stuff that you'll wear, which will show the field in it. All of this stuff is just so, and this is where, I want to keep driving this back though. And it is part, like, things have gotten to be too, it's just gotten to be way too easy to do a lot of things. And so you don't learn and you don't process. Like I helped my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter. We spent a couple hours making a watering project for her school. Here was the scenario: if you go on vacation for 2 weeks, you got to keep this plant alive. I'm like, okay, we got this fucking nailed, right? So I put this, I'm going through this plan with her, and we film it, like, we kind of script it out, and we're having some fun with it. And we have all of those materials, and she gets to use the drill to put a couple holes. Yeah, and we're doing all of this stuff, but it's good, it's good bonding, it's good presentation skills, and all of that. And yet, like, kids in her class can just go on Amazon. Not to knock Amazon, but I mean, you can just click the button and click, there it is, you buy it, and then you just set it up. I mean, so it's one of these things where, you can get your hands in the dirt, or you can just order it, can come to the door, you open the box, put the batteries, and there you go. So I'm trying to figure out, because honestly, I mean, I've talked to people lately in their early 20s, and it seems like they're lost, like they don't know who to go to, and the universities are useless in helping them. Completely useless. I'm like, didn't you learn this in school? Like this? No, we didn't cover this. I'm like, well, here's how it really works. So
it's created a whole new, I'd say, I don't want to say industry, unless you don't want to take advantage of that, but of people who have to help them unlearn what they've learned and then learn it. I mean, you think about the just waste of economic productivity, but also of someone's life, where they get to be 20-something years old and they've learned nothing that they really need to succeed in life. And not only do they need to get to spend the next 10 years unlearning all the things that they were told that was not true, now they got to go out and learn all the things that are true and that they do need to know to succeed and to accomplish what they want to do in life. And on top of that, they're going to be doing that when they're surrounded by a lot of NPCs, if they're going to follow the latest meme. And, why are you trying? And it goes back to, you were mentioning the school that was dropping the dress code. Yeah, because it goes back to the lowest common denominator. We don't want to discriminate against these people. We don't want to hold anybody to this type of standard. We don't want to do any of that. And so somebody who does dress above the curve and does, make themselves presentable, and is going to be seen as a threat. And a young man or a young woman who tries to go against the flow is going to be targeted as well. So this is just all this stuff that they've got to deal with. And
yeah, and I think what you're getting at, and what worries me is, so what if you do want to dress just moderately formal, a button-down shirt, tan slacks, and
Dockers and a button-down,
Dockers and a button-down. Are you going to be seen as preppy? Is this going to be seen as a microaggression? And I don't mean to mean light of that. I mean, honestly, are you?
Yeah, seriously, that's a legitimate question at this point. Yes. Is showing up dressed like a human being instead of a junkie, is that going to be seen as offensive? Well, okay, being offended is the basis for restricting behavior, you again go to the lowest common denominator of who is the most offended at the most outlandish thing. And that's where you start to have cultural and societal breakdowns, and also just resentment by people who feel like they want to do with their own thing and they're being controlled by other people. When you had schools that were canceling like Christmas festivals or holiday type celebrations because some people might be offended about the idea of Christmas, when most people who aren't religious don't care. And even if they did, they're just not going to make a big fuss about it. But you have the fringe, you have the outliers on the bell curve deciding that everybody's going to cater to them.
Well, yeah, didn't they ban like Father-Daughter Day or because they were saying, it's discriminating against people who, I don't know, don't have a father, or maybe they live with two lesbians, or no, I'm not kidding. I mean,
you're right. That's gone. Yeah, Grandparents' Day, is pretty much gone, and most of those have been replaced with just something generic.
Something that has no meaning.
Yeah, now it's like Bring a Junkie to School Day or something. Or
Bring Tyrone.
Bring
a gangbanger to school day. But it's. I don't know. We pretty much are living in this dysgenic world. I mean, in a way, like we were kind of fortunate in a lot of ways. We're older. We didn't. we didn't experience it, we still kind of have some remembrance of it. So I mean, for us, it's just kind of like maybe a longing for days past. But
Right.
the younger people now, man, there's no easy answer. I mean,
I think the other problem that really kills me, because I was thinking about this for a while, somebody was pointing out, well, other peoples have gone through far worse things than us, and you think about World War One, World War Two, and I would retort to them that, or reply to them saying, right, but imagine having to go through World War One, and yet you're not allowed to acknowledge, and nobody's acknowledging that a war is going on, that these things are not happening. I mean, I think the psychological toll is far worse. Going through the Depression, imagine if you had to live in a society where it was illegal or verboten or offensive to mention that we were going through an economic depression. On top of being poor and losing your farm and having to, abandon everything, you had to basically accept lies, or you're being lectured or had to deal with propaganda of why that was happening. And if people were just honest about it, we were just able to talk about it, or at least if the average person thought that way, or acknowledged what was going on, it might be more tolerable. But a lot of people are, I think, in very deep denial about the changes that are going on, and they try to escape all that kind of stuff. And I think that is part of the reason there was such a strong backlash from the whole NFL controversy, because that was the one place that they could retreat to deny what was going on, and their last little refuge was removed.
Yeah, I mean, I've given up all sports ball. I mean, I used to be a huge Steeler fan, and I don't watch any sports.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the Brewers now, I mean, I remember, and the reason it has interest now is I remember 1982 being a kid and listening to the games on the radio.
Yeah.
And you knew the announcers because you listened all season long, and you tried to jiggle the antenna just right because we had a mountain kind of next to us. Not like the mountain in Wisconsin isn't like a mountain out west, but yeah. So I mean, it was kind of, and the players stayed with the teams, pretty much like most of their career. But so there's some nostalgia there. But I told my wife, I said, I went online last night to see what a Brewers jersey, just a plain jersey without my name. I wouldn't do that anyway. I'm not going to be 47 years old with my name on the back of a Brewers jersey walking around town. But I said, just like a jersey, how much does a jersey cost? Why don't you?
I'm curious.
Okay, the low end of a jersey from MLB, Major League Baseball, the store, the low end $240, the high end $320.
Oh,
and that is just for a jersey with the name of the team on it and then the logo on the sleeve. Nothing on the back, no name, no number. $240 to $320.
And yet they're getting these teams are getting government subsidized stadiums, and they're getting. Yeah, I'm just thinking, you guys couldn't, take a little bit of a pay cut, or at least you get the, you get the stadium built, and then you do some advertising, and you use that revenue to pay off the taxpayers that you relied on to get the stadium. That's just what I think also bothers a lot of people, is that it's like having to go pay to use the library. You already paid for the library when you paid your tax, local tax levy or whatever it was to go for the library. It's the same thing with a lot of these sports teams, where the government either does a huge subsidy that it has to fill with new taxes, or it just, straight up gives them money or whatever, tax breaks. And then you got to pay a fortune to go into this game, in which you got to pay a fortune to get the apparel, and then you got to pay a fortune to eat any of the food there.
Well, what can I just say about the library thing? I'd be all for that, because if you live in like Seattle, the library is just for homeless people and junkies. So
I think that's becoming, it's becoming like that pretty much everywhere. Wherever you have a common space like that, you're going to have, because they just won't enforce the rules. Like if you had a library where they said, you had to adhere to a certain dress code, and you had some sort of rules there, or something. I don't know. At the very least, these people used to go to a soup kitchen, or they'd go somewhere else, so they understood that the library was not for them, to use as kind of a personal homeless shelter that was paid for by another homeless shelter.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one who's just massively annoyed by the lack of public space. In well, I just had to bail Chicago. I'm maybe some of our listeners and maybe some of you are unaware of why, but I was sexually assaulted by one of our, friendly African American neighbors who, um, my hippie neighbor had been allowing to live in her home, and he snuck into my apartment, and so I have packed up all my shit, and I'm in a secret location in Georgia while I wait for my apartment in LA to get ready, which feels so spy-like and glamorous, but secret location. But
Anne's in a bunker right now.
yeah, yeah, I'm at least 20 feet underground. But if I specify how much further underground than 20 feet, they'll be able to find me. But even before I became the victim of a crime, and actually that a couple of days after I moved out, there was a black guy just walking around my neighborhood shooting white men, like just shooting them. And it's just like the neighborhood has gone downhill so fast. But before like the crime even got really bad, I noticed like you couldn't use public spaces, and it wasn't just the library. Like, you go to the library and you think you can, sit there, take out a book, bring your computer, work, read. It's quiet. You don't have to go to a coffee shop where all the freak bags are already hanging out. And the coffee shops in Chicago are all full of, you can't work there quietly because some people will actually bring their kids there and then dump them next to strangers and expect the strangers to babysit their kids while they go talk to someone else in the cafe. Sometimes
we're really witnessing the tragedy of the commons,
yeah,
taking, especially in the Seattle area. John could definitely attest to that, where if it's public space, the lowest quality people will go in there and take it over and
yeah.
and reduce the standard of living. I mean, imagine if, and John, you can maybe voice your thoughts on this, because I can't imagine paying the amount of, well, you got in there well before things got crazy, but I can't imagine somebody paying so much money to move into an area where the public parks are
Homeless shelters.
yeah, they're basically homeless shelters. I mean, you
Yeah, they're
can't take
homeless
your kid.
shelters.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't know what to say other than if I lived in one of those areas and there was somebody, and there was a park nearby where I took my kid and I saw homeless people there, I would essentially go, if there was a homeowners association or neighborhood association, I would go to them and say, we got to deal with this now, and they got to leave. And we can't have this. We're the ones who pay the taxes. They don't. They don't have a say.
Yeah,
And
but you're racist.
yeah, yeah, whatever.
No, like Green Lake, they actually did that. Like Green Lake, TJ, you know where Green Lake is, right?
Oh yeah.
It's beautiful. It's just like man-made lake. It's 3 miles around. It's used to be this beautiful place, picturesque. I mean, you could, it was a really nice, pleasant walk, and it was really cool in the summer because the chicks were all anyway. And but and now it's basically they turn this giant park with this lake into a freaking homeless shelter. And also the homes around there were really exclusive, because if you lived like right around the perimeter, you had this gorgeous lakefront view. And they actually did get together because, of course, with these homeless encampments, what comes with that? Drugs and crime. I'm not talking murders and shit like that. I'm talking about people breaking into your garage and stealing everything, stealing whatever is not bolted down.
Chicago, it's murders too.
Yeah, it was Chicago. Well, yeah, no, Chicago. Seattle is not, because I don't want to give. It's not. I mean, it's a lot more violent than it was when I first moved here, but it's not. Right. We don't have a real.
It's not a crime problem. What it is, because I was just in Seattle the other day for an event. Seattle is still very beautiful, but the problem is that these tourist locations in the downtown area and other areas are. The common spaces are taken over by the homeless people. And here's the problem. If you were living in a very poor town where those people were people who had lived in the town, they had been residing in the town, and they were just hard on their luck, that's one thing. These people came here from other parts of the country to take advantage of freebies. Yeah. And they have the other thing that goes with that is they don't, these people should be in mental institutions, most of them, I'd say, or if they're drug addicts, you got to get them off like these are people who are not there. I would venture to say because they're hard on their luck financially, because those people are eager to get out of that situation as quickly as possible because they know how long you don't last, or how quickly you. It's not an easy. It's a lifestyle that you don't live long, just because of the violence within the community, because you're dealing with drug addicts and people who are just emotionally and mentally unstable. And so, but you're not going to take your kid to a park where there's that possibility, because they may not do it 100 times. All it takes is one time.
The problem is, I was, when I first moved into this area, I was excited because it was close to a very beautiful park right on the lake. And, you'd see people out there and they seemed to be having fun and it was nice. But I'm kind of a solitary person, and I'd like to bring my book or my computer or whatever and sit down by the lake in this park, by the beach, and enjoy my time and be outside of my apartment or out. And I understand if you're homeless and you're crazy and you're on drugs and you have no place else to go, okay, you have to be in a public space. But what you don't have to do is feel entitled to a conversation with me.
Or entitled to harass college girls, which is what happens quite a bit from what I understand.
Yeah.
But John, you were telling us about what the people in Green Lake were doing before I cut you off on.
Well, no, I was just saying that I saw a little bit on the local news here about that, and they did get together and they protested about it, but they were given a lot of backlash, and these are all people that are, they always have to couch everything they say by saying, oh no, well, I'm a Democrat and I'm a liberal, but, and then I said, well, yeah, because you've been voting for these liberal fucks. You put them on the city council and they end up appointing police commissioners. I think we have like some dyke lesbian bitch as our chief of police or something like that, who tells the cops to stand down. I mean, I have a buddy that's a deputy sheriff in King County here, and they're told don't go into the homeless. So, don't, if you witness a crime, don't. I mean,
that's what's scary for, not necessarily for me, because I think I'm in a location that's just not going to have that problem because I'm in a different county. But my fear is that this is a disease, a mental disease, or just a disease of the soul, really, and it spreads. Especially when as these people move to the central part of the state, and what they're going to do slowly is influence policy countywide, where I'm terrified 10, 15 years from now, that's going to be the policy in my county and in my area. And
right.
And I guys, or not you guys, but I'm just not going to tolerate it. Like I'm not quite sure what I would do about it. I'd probably just get our community together and say we're going to be vigilant in ensuring that the law gets enforced here, and make it clear that if you're here to cause trouble, you're not welcome. And if the law enforcement are going to cause a confrontation over that, just say, you guys have a job to do and you're not doing it, and we're not going to basically just, I think, shame them and say that they're not because the thing about law enforcement communities is I think that a lot of them are very sensitive to how they're perceived. And so if they're not being perceived in a friendly manner by the ordinary people that they work with, I think that that's a morale issue. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just speculating on that one.
Well, I mean, for I've had because of the work I've done, I've had a lot of interactions with the police in Seattle, and for the most part, the rank and file cops are really good people, very professional. They're real pros, but their hands are tied by the policies that are instituted. So it's I don't know, because I was thinking about moving, and I still am. I got a long story, but I won't get into it. But I do plan on moving, and I was searching for other places to go. And one of the places I was researching was Boise, Idaho, because I got to live in some sort of metropolitan area. I can't do the live in the middle of nowhere thing. And now I understand that Boise, all the liberals left California and moved to Boise, and what they do is they fuck up a location. Yeah. Then when it turns to shit, then they move somewhere else because that place is bad. It's bad because of the policies that they instituted there. And then what they do, they form this voting block, and then they vote in a bunch of liberal fucks, and then they fuck up the city.
Well,
So
right. It's funny. I was talking to somebody from Idaho who said the exact same thing, and I had a buddy who's from Montana who's saying the same thing there. So I have a friend here who's getting very frustrated with the stuff he's seen. He lives in the Seattle area, and he's talking about moving to one of these other states. And I go, I if you're going to do that, just understand you got about 5 years, 5 6 years of enjoying whatever you got to do, but it's going to the change will come there as it has come here. And I'm not sure if that's a strategy you want to do where you just keep running from it, but at some point we're going to run out of places to go. And, I don't really have a solution or strategy for that for people. But yeah, that's one of the
Seattle's lost. All right. Seattle's gone. I mean, it's gone so far. I mean, we have open communists on our city council.
Right.
I mean,
who get to morally lecture other people who feel morally intimidated by this. And I'm just sitting here thinking how little self-respect someone has to let someone who subscribes to an ideology that killed tens of millions of people in the 20th century, how they can morally lecture anybody. And calling it democratic or whatever they want to call it, it is what it is.
Yeah, so I think that, like, I can't speak. I mean, it's happening to Boise. I don't know how long that city has, but from what I read, I'm not going to move there. But I don't know. I do believe that you're right. Ultimately, we got to make a stand somewhere, but it ain't here. It's this is already lost. All right, the barbarians are inside the gate here. Maybe the people in Idaho will,
it'll change when they don't have the money to buy. When the people who tolerate it can't turn to, well, I don't want to do anything because I don't want to lose my job. I got good pay. I've got a good house. I got cars. I got my health insurance. When all that stuff is taken away, people will suddenly start, I think that's what drives so much of people's behavior nowadays is that they give up this stuff. They surrender on this stuff because of the belief that if they cause a confrontation or if they escalate, they could lose this stuff. And they'd much rather, they can always just, drink away their problems or smoke away their problems or find something to get addicted to that helps distract them from the fact that this is going on and they're just letting it happen.
Yeah, the way it happened in Chicago is kind of funny because it's not as overtly socialist as Portland because Chicago has this good old tradition of being corrupt. What we did was it was kind of these soft pedal socialist policies, but also we broke up public housing to try to get rid of the gangs, which just spread the gangs all over the city, which would have been fine if we could have let the police deal with it. But the city's so corrupt that there's very little budget for the police. The shocking thing about my sexual assault case was I immediately went to the hospital and got a rape kit taken. I told the cops I knew where the guy was. I knew the hippie bitch that this homeless dude was staying with. Not only did they not feel like going over and interrogating her or trying to figure out where he was, I found out later it's going to take them 8 months to a year to even, wow, we've circled back to DNA, to even check his DNA against their DNA database because the city of Chicago is so broke because of our good old-fashioned corruption that they don't even have their own forensics lab for crime.
So they farm it out, so it's going to take them up to a year to process the rape.
Yeah. And so, like, they don't even need to be outright socialists about it just because of corruption and just taking in immense amounts of tax money and it trickling out to so-and-so's cousin. They don't have the money and resources to deal with the amount of crime that's resulted from, well, A, from the gangs spreading all over the city, and B, because after Black Lives Matter, the cops were terrified to actually take the steps that are necessary, that are sometimes violent, to capture and incarcerate Black criminals.
Yeah, they were afraid to do their jobs because then they'd be racists.
Yeah, I mean that's the closest that the Chicago downward spiral comes to being out.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing is the creation of anarcho tyrannies. I can't remember who coined that phrase, but it's this idea that the laws that should be enforced aren't, and the laws that shouldn't be enforced are. I would almost say, though, in Seattle and other areas, if you try to enforce the laws, and we kind of saw that in Portland, where the Antifa shut down that street corner, or whatever,
Oh yeah.
and the police officer just stood by and did nothing. But what do you think that would have happened if that one guy had gotten out of his car and tried to defend himself? That cop would have driven in there and arrested him, probably. And so that's where you have the situation where the law enforcement is almost, and I know that despite what you're saying from your own personal experience, I think that there's this perception that for a lot of people that if they try and stand up for themselves and do self-defense, the police are going to act against them, meaning instead of upholding the law, the law enforcement can undermine it. And, despite what the officers feel, and that's the thing with the officers, I feel like need to take a stand as well within their own institutions.
Yeah.
And say, look, we're going to enforce the laws, and if you want to come, almost like what Andrew Jackson said about the Supreme Court. You issued an opinion, you go enforce it. These are the laws in the books. We're going to go enforce them. If you don't like those laws, then repeal them. If you think that it's okay to litter, and if it's okay to use drugs on our street corners, then repeal your ordinances. But don't pass laws or have laws in the books and then say it's a crime to enforce them. That is a dysfunctional way to manage either a city or a county or a state or a country.
Yeah, but what happened in Seattle, for example, is I don't know if you know about this, but the Seattle Police Department was doing their job, and actually the Obama's Justice Department came in and declared the police department here to be in violation in aggregate of civil rights because disproportionate number of arrests of people of color or whatever. So they literally they lost their autonomy and were pretty much being controlled by the federal government.
Yeah, I'm not unsympathetic to some of the people in these positions because they're trying to do a job, but I don't know. I think it's just like I was saying, watching this unfold and not knowing what to do, because we're in a position where we don't have the power to change that kind of stuff. But the question is, how do we respond to it? And the only conclusion I had was move to an area where that stuff is unlikely to happen because it's just not conducive. I mean, we get the occasional, and I live in the central part of the state, and we get the occasional hitchhiker during the summer, but that's mainly for people who are doing the Pacific Crest Trail. They're not doing though we do see the occasional homeless person, but they don't stick around for the winter because it gets down to 10 degrees out there. And the thing is the people in our county don't have so much money that the county can just raise taxes. I mean, they shop at Walmart and they have to balance their budgets, and they don't, pocketbook politics is very big in rural areas where there's not as much money. In Seattle, in other areas, they can spend as much money as they want because the people always have more money to pay.
Yeah, until eventually they'll institute policies that will chase big business away. Like we would have lost Amazon if they introduced that head tax.
Right.
Yeah, that is and what's funny is the council from the stories that I've read didn't seem to really they didn't take that to heart. They've doubled down. They're trying to find the right opportunity. Though, John, we'll see if, at least with that city, if things turn around where in the next couple of years when there's city council elections.
I doubt it. I'm hoping to be out of here, depending on when the construction thing goes on within this time next year. We'll see, but that's my plan. I haven't decided where I'm going yet because I kind of had that plan for Boise, seemed like a good idea, and then I researched it and it scared me. So maybe I'll be moving to the Cascades with you, brother. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Anna's totally scared the shit out of me with Chicago. I'm not going there.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm
gonna join Anna in her bunker wherever she is.
Yeah. I was probably going to mention you could always check out Spokane. It's I haven't lived there for a long time, but it seemed to be there's not enough money there to attract the kind of problems that we're seeing in Seattle. But um, anyways, that's so I
That's
think yeah, that's that. So only so much you can reiterate on that. I'm kind of good with wrapping it up. We've been around for going on for 2 hours.
Yeah, and just I wanna add. So I'm over and YouTube has been down their video streaming across much of the world. So I do have that confirmed from a couple sources here. So
Okay, because I was a little worried earlier when I was noticing that and
yeah,
was afraid it
yeah.
was something we were
And
doing.
a couple people were putting that in the chat, and then all of a sudden I lost the chat. So if somebody made a $10,000, super chat, sorry,
yeah.
right now I can't see it. So
I got to make sure I get my cut of that because Aaron's not here today, so we get to divvy up any money that's been made.
I lost all the chat stuff. Just went into like the TV screen back from the old days when it would just be
yeah, that's what I saw too. Yeah,
it's just weird. So, but yeah, I think we got into a lot of what I would say is helping people to recognize agency and purpose and where to find that, and also where it isn't, all the masquerading of agency and purpose. And just to let people kind of simmer with that, especially if you're in your, this is something you mentioned a little bit, TJ. I really think if you're in your 30s and 40s and maybe even 50s today, you got to play it safe in some regards because, yeah, all of a sudden, if you are in the background of some photo of some rally that turns out to be a rally, um, you know, whatever someone is saying, it takes us to your employer and says, "Hey, TJ was here." You're like, "I was walking across the street going to the, getting some mortar for my fireplace at the mortar store," and they're like, "Dude, no, you're looking right at the," and they're like, "You're gone from whatever you're." But I think people have to be so afraid, as you said, like I'm a dad, so I've got my kids, and we've positioned ourselves to kind of now be removed from being dependent, upon a certain employer and things like that. So I'm able to do some things on that safety side too, where I can come in and consult and say, "This is horseshit, like what they're telling you. This is completely garbage.
Right.
This is you should just go through your insurance carrier. They'll do this free on-site thing for you. This whole like $12,000 quote is bogus." And then so I can be real with people, but I think there is this fear of with the doxing that we saw, and even if you go back to what was it, the deplorable with Mike Cernovich, and he was saying, people were throwing batteries and feces and piss and threatening to throw acid at like people attending, and he's like thinking too with his family. I mean, he has a wife and he has a kid.
Right.
How do you navigate? So I think these people walk a very cautious line because they don't want to be tagged as associated with anything or anything controversial. And if you're in your 20s, you don't have much to lose. I mean, in some regard or whatever, because it's like, sue me. Well, what are you going to get? Or, but there is this this swath of 30 years where you got to really watch your ass.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to make present a scenario, and is the idea that at some point a lot of or a significant percentage of people will just get off the internet entirely because it's become too much of a liability to post anything because you don't know, even if what you post today is appropriate and okay and acceptable and won't get you fired, tomorrow it could, and the next day after that. And so I think people are going to just decide what's the point. If I can't communicate and can't say what's on my mind, then
Right.
why what's the purpose of being here? And I think that may come about when we have a generation that's younger and just doesn't have any ties whatsoever, and they see the disaster that's unfolded. But I could be wrong, but that's a possible scenario.
Oh yeah, between the danger and the fact that everything's just become boring, predictable screaming at each other.
Right.
Yeah, there's no discourse anymore. People are just screaming at each other.
Yeah. Like politics can be an interesting subject, but I'm calling myself politics to hostile these days because most people just pick a trend or a team, and I love to root for the Green Bay Packers, but I realize that it's arbitrary and silly. They root for their political team like it's a baseball team with very little more critical thought than that, and become, hostile and nasty, and worst of all, just predictable about it.
Right.
Well, we should wrap it up. Everybody should everybody should plug their stuff. And you want to go first? How can people find about your books, your work, things like that?
Yeah, my Amazon page. Just Google just go to Amazon and look for Ann Sturzinger, Nusquam. Look for The Talkative Corpse, which is probably easier to find than my name. The Talkative Corpse. My latest book, The Sen Vendetta. I have multiple entertaining, funny genre novels as well as literary fiction, and they're actually fun to read.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. David?
Yeah, you can find my stuff at safetyphd.com, and I do a blog post. I also do a podcast about twice a month, safety, but we talk about agency and purpose. I interview a lot of people. Had on 2 people who were on the ground in the Carolinas doing boat rescues, and they were talking about how FEMA was telling them not to put your boat in the water. They were with a 501c3, so they had all the paperwork, and FEMA's like, nope, you can't, come down to help this village and all this stuff. So I try to parse out some really interesting kind of stories like that. So again, safetyphd.com.
TJ?
Yeah, you can go to tjmartinell.com. You can find links to my books and podcasts there. And I have a new novel that is coming out ideally this week called The Redeemers. And I will be making an announcement on my website when that happens.
And I believe you also have some stuff published on Terror House Mag as well.
Yeah, I've got a few short stories.
Okay, and myself, you can find me on Twitter at John_Steele99 and on YouTube at John Steele Show. And we should plug Aaron's stuff. Aaron, you can find him on captaincapitalism.blogspot.com. He also has several other. I think he has the Older Brother website up now. But I don't know if it's olderbrother.com or I'm not sure. But anyway, you can go to captaincapitalism.blogspot.com. There'll be links to all his books and his writings and everything like that. And sorry, Aaron, that we weren't able to raise more super chats, but apparently a third of the internet is literally down. Or a third
of a strategic strike, and then Aaron somehow knew to stay off tonight. If there was going to be like 4 people taken out, it was going to be us, and he'd be safe. So he knew this was happening. And Aaron has a book coming out too. I don't know the name, but I know he's been rapidly trying to finish this.
Oh yeah, it's a great secret. He's not telling what it is until it's out. I don't even know if he's going to tell it. I think because it's going to be like Pretty Little Lies kind of thing.
So yeah, this was a government takedown tonight, and somehow working behind the black hats have kept the audio up. But the Older Brother just waiting. Julian Assange is like, damn it.
It'll be the only podcast left.
Only podcast. Edward Snowden. He's downloading it right now.
All right. Well, everybody, the 7 viewers are still here. Thanks for listening to the end. We appreciate the dedication.
Thank you.
We love you.
All right, guys. Everyone have a good night.
All right. Take care, man.
Everybody. Bye.